Hello, and today we want to talk here about ways to play Sicilian defense for white. So what we want to do, we want to turn people, positional players that play white side of Sicilian into bloodthirsty killers. So remember, when you play Sicilian defense, you cannot play it passively, because this opening must be played. You must have very active plan, otherwise, as a rule, you're going to get worse game. So let's look at some games played by the strong grandmasters against various variations of Sicilian defense. First game we're going to look at was played by Bulgarian GM Topolov, one of the top players in the world today. E4, C5, knight F3, E6, D4, C takes D, knight takes D4, A6, bishop D3, and G6. Now normally it's not recommended to play E6 and G6 in the same game, especially in Sicilian, because in those cases D6 square of blacks becomes very vulnerable. But not in this position, not in this move order, because D file is congested by white pieces, and white does not have immediate plan to occupy D6 square. After G6, white played C4 and bishop G7, bishop E3, knight C6, knight takes C6. This is all theory. B takes C and C5. Now this is very interesting move. What is the idea of move C5? This turns game into very, very sharp position. So white is giving up the B2 pawn to play knight D2 and later knight C4 and knight D6, having dark square weaknesses occupied. So after C5, that was played bishop takes B2, and now knight D2. In this position, I don't think black should have played bishop takes A1, what they did. I think black should have tried just to retreat somehow and try to suffer. They would have been suffered anyway because of D6 square. But giving up dark square bishop makes their game practically lost. And after queen takes A1, I find this position very bad for black. Black played F6, of course not queen F6 because of the bishop D4, and rook on H8 is lost. So black played F6 and white played knight C4. Now let's talk about this position. Black has a rook and a pawn for a bishop, but knight is going to be on D6 next move, plus black's light square bishop looks like a tall pawn, and knight cannot move yet because of F6 weakness, and black cannot castle. It looks very, very bad, probably because it is very bad. So knight C4, and here black played A5, trying to bring C8 bishop into the game by playing bishop A6, knight D6 check, king F8, And before white launches decisive attack on black's king position, they have to castle. So we castled here, and bishop a6. This is some achievement for black. At least they exchanged one dead piece, c8 bishop. So white played bishop takes a6, rook takes a6, and now f4 for white. This looks really bad. Now black has problems. White does not have immediate threat, but black has problems of making move. Almost anything you play creates more weaknesses. Black played h5, trying to bring maybe rook into the game. Rook h7 and rook e7. And after h5, white played rook f3. Now white wants to go rook g3. So h4 stopping rook g3. Now white goes rook h3. What white wants, since black cannot really do anything, white's plan is quite slow but very deadly. Bishop f2 and bishop takes h4. After a4, bishop f2, and now black played rook a8. Bishop takes h4. You see that black plays just back and forth. They played last 4 moves with the rook pawns and then with the rook backwards, rook a8. So black has absolutely no plan, no idea, no game, no hope. King g7, f5. This is a kind of beginning of the end. Now if black goes g5, white can simply take on g5 because of the pin on a large diagonal, a1, h8, on a long diagonal. f5, queen a5. Now black is trying to show some activity to penetrate with the queen, but it's too late now. And so white plays queen c1, rook b8, and now bishop to e1. You see the queen is hanging, so then after queen a6, rook g3, attacking g6 pawn. Game is practically over. So queen e2 was played, and now bishop d2. Knight to e7, h3. Rook b5. Black wants to find some relief after knight takes b5 and queen takes or pawn takes b5 to get rid of the strong knight on d6. But after rook b5, white played rook e3 first. Queen has to go to h5. And now when queen is out of the action on this side, on the queen side, knight takes b5, c takes b, and rook d3. Now we see that white is not attacking on the king side anymore, but black collapses in the center and on a queen side. G takes f, rook takes d7, queen to e8, and c6. We see how bishop can come to b4 or queen can come to the c5. King g6, bishop b4, white's piece is completely dominating the board. Knight c8, queen e3 with the idea of queen g3 check, mating attack, and somehow black found a couple of more moves to stay alive. And after queen g3 check, rook g5, queen c7, threatening rook g7 check, threatening rook d8, and after queen h8, rook d8, black resigned. Very well played game. It's interesting to notice that this kind of blockading position and positional sacrifices very frequently appear as ideas in various different openings. Very frequently in English opening, where white also sacrifices some material, in some cases exchange, and gets dark square, occupied dark squares. So, but in Sicilian, we just saw one, and this is actually common strategy for white to play on the dark squares. We can find it very frequently also in French defense, with early exchange of dark square bishops and white occupied dark squares. So this was one example. Now, a game we want to see next is a game played between Anand and Gelfand. It's in one of my most favorite variations of Sicilian defense. It's a Grand Prix. I made a lot of researches in there, and I was pleased to see this game played, but we're not going to really stop in the opening part in detail, so we're going to go through the opening real quickly. Knight c3, d6, f4, g6, knight f3, bishop g7, bishop c4. It's interesting that bishop c4 is a very common move in this position, but what I like better is bishop b5 check, and after bishop d7, bishop c4. The question is, why bishop on d7? Why we want to have bishop on d7? Because in some cases, when black plays knight c6 and then e6 and they try for d5, d5 is going to be very difficult to play with bishop on d7. So anyway, but let's look at what happened in a game. Anand played bishop c4, knight c6, d3, e6. White castled, and knight g to e7. And here, white played queen e1. Well, if we now put black bishop on d7 as an extra tempo for black, this is a lot better position for white than the other one. That's what I was advocating. That's why I was advocating bishop b5 check and then return. So after queen e1, black went h6, bishop b3, and a6. And now white went e5. This is very, very interesting move because allows d5 for black. Now, what would have happened on d5? I think this was the better move to play. That was not the move chosen by black. Black played knight f5. But let's look at d5 move. d5 is the move that kind of shuts off the bishop on b3 and gives black, I think, normal position. So then white maybe has to play knight e2, followed by c3 and bishop c2, which is double-edged position. I personally don't like black's approach when they played knight f5, king h1, and knight f to d4. Because now white gets the e4 square to knight e4, knight takes f3, rook takes f3, d takes e, f takes e, and knight takes e5. Okay, black won a pawn. Are they happy? I don't think they are, because, well, if we look at this position after rook f1, we see that c5 pawn is hanging. White is going to play bishop f4, queen g3, and you see every piece, every white piece is developed perfectly, and they have very good position here. So after rook f1, black played g5. Well, possibility was castling. But what happens after castle? I think this is very dangerous position for black, because after bishop takes h6, black plays bishop takes h6, and if white goes knight f6 check, and king, anywhere king moves, queen takes e5 next, and black's position is very suspicious. After bishop g7, yeah, it's not suspicious anymore. Now it's almost over. After rook f3, there are no suspicions about this position. So, which means that white couldn't castle in that position. If white cannot castle yet, so they played g5 to stop bishop takes h6, and after the castling. Now, after g5, queen g3, as planned, and still black cannot castle. If black castles here, well, they did castle actually. I don't think they could castle because the position becomes very dangerous, almost lost there. After they castle, bishop takes g5. When I said black couldn't castle there, that does not really mean that I have some other good move in mind for black. I don't have any move in mind, but because maybe there are no good moves. What white wants, maybe play bishop f4, attacking knight, because if pawn takes bishop, then queen takes g7, becomes very bad for black. So in the position, after g5 and queen g3, black castled, and white played bishop takes g5. Now, and after bishop takes g5, it's already close, game close to the end. H takes g, and knight takes g5. Now every piece is attacking. You see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 again. Every piece is an attack. 2 pieces defending. This has to be decisive attack for white. Knight takes g5, knight g6. Rook a to e1. Every piece is ready. Queen e7. And now rook f5. Now why rook f5? First thing white will want to do is to stop black from any kind of pawn activities. And secondly, after rook f5, well, we see the idea in a couple of moves. Bishop f6, that's the black's move. Black has to find defense against threat of queen h3. That's another reason why rook f5, protecting the knight on g5, because immediate queen h3 will be met by queen takes g5. So rook f5 kind of protecting the knight on g5. So after rook f5, black plays bishop f6, again stopping queen h3 because of bishop takes g5. Now white cannot go queen h3, but white plays knight takes e6. Now black made a terrible move, f takes e, and lost quickly. But here already very difficult to find any reasonable defense for white, for black. F takes e, And now rook takes e6. And here is the position. White's rook is hanging, plus black has extra 2 pieces, but there is no defense. King g7, they gave queen away, because it's easy to see what happens when bishop takes e6, and now queen takes g6. And you'll see that everything ends in a matter of 2 moves. Because on queen g7, bishop takes e6, king h8, rook h5, it's a checkmate position, and same thing happens on bishop g7, bishop takes e6 check, king h8, rook h5. So what happened in the game instead, after rook takes e6, black played king g7, and after rook takes e7 check, bishop takes e7, rook takes f8, bishop takes f8. You know, material is not that bad for black. They have 2 minor pieces and a rook for queen and 3 pawns, but those minor pieces are really minor now because they are all undeveloped. And after h4, white cannot keep position, black cannot keep position together. Black just resigned in this position because after king h7, h5, and if knight moves, you see the queen can, actually if knight moves to e7, then maybe simply bishop f7, building threats, or maybe even queen c7, totally paralyzing black's pieces. And if knight goes to e5, then all kinds of unpleasant things will happen after queen g8 check. Black is totally lost and they resign. So this showed one careless move that was played by black. They did not go d5. They supposed to go. The principal mistake was made by Gelfand, world-class player, that he plays Sicilian all his adult life. And he failed to recognize that he's supposed to close the center. He made principal mistake. He's supposed to play that position closed and not open. If he played d5, it would have been closed position with double-edged, but he opened position at the time, and in the area he was not really safe, and white's pieces became overwhelmingly active. So that was the principal mistake, and he paid for it. It's dangerous to do against some players of Anand's class.